I'm going through the first. Now, this is going to be really good. We're going to read excerpts of these different screenplays, starting Captain Beefheart versus the Grunt People, and the Grunt People has an exclamation mark after it. It's copyright 1964. And Zappa's living at 314 West G Street. Look at that, the G note. He's on West G Street in Ontario, California. That's a combination of Bob and the United States. Ontario is a town or something in California, but it's also where a lot of our work that we just heard tonight comes from, Ontario. And we go forth to the section, an introductory statement or something that I had found. Now, what's interesting is Zappa, in 1970, on his basement studio, he had the name Dr. Zircon in his Happy Valley lab, or something like that. It's in one of those Barry Miles articles. It had Happy Valley, Lab, and Dr. Zircon. These are characters in the screenplays. The first movie is based in Happy Valley. And what's interesting is as you read these screenplays, you see that Zappa was doing parts of this one movie. This one movie play has everything that comes later. Might not be till 5 years later, but it all cycles back to the same syndrome. His metaphor for the world, the global village becoming the global theater, is concentration moon. It's all about some species on the moon and the setting up of concentration camps there. It's pretty interesting how he put his mind into okay, this is the movie we're going to make, and we'll just issue fragments of it until we get enough money to do the whole movie. So it ends up all these albums and different scenes are fragments of this ongoing script. And he does this in 64, the same year Understanding Media comes out, 1964. There's an interesting shadowing of Zappa, of McLuhan.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything anybody wants to say before I get to this stuff?
Just that I think it's also something new that we're going also into the different type of speech, Zappa, verbalization, that most of the people concentrate only on the music, and they may say, oh, his lyrics are funny, or something very superficial, like they're weird. But now we're going into this aspect of Zappa, the speech.
Let's see, what was I going to say? I think we'll go to the Them or Us script, which is 1984, because it's the ionic concepts that he puts in here. Now, some people might say, oh, well, those are traditional science fiction ideas, but the way Zappa does it, it seems a little newer, and it definitely approximates what Ion's saying, and that's what is pretty interesting. So this Them or Us is a book he put out in 1984, and he says in the foreword, this cheesy little homemade book, and it's not little, it's big, it's 350 pages or so long, 351 pages. So he says, it's called Them or Us, the book. He says, this cheesy little homemade book was prepared for the amusement of people who already enjoy Zappa music. It is not for intellectuals or other dead people. It's not for intellectuals or other dead people. Intellectuals, that'd be visually biased people, not for eye people who are dead, for tactile people and ear people. It is designed to answer one of the more troubling questions related to conceptual continuity. Here's the question. How do all these things that don't have anything to do with each other fit together, forming a larger absurdity? That's the question. How do all these things that don't have anything to do with each other fit together, forming a larger absurdity? And this is 20 years Zappa formed the Mothers in 64, 65 period. And so it's 20 years later, and a lot of conceptual continuity clues and motifs have been dropped in all his different works. So this question is gathering 20 years later. So he says, your enjoyment of the contents could be enhanced by hearing the music described in the text. The album shown on the back cover contains some of these songs. Other songs derive from Joe's Garage and Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch. Now, I got a message from Corbin a couple hours before the show asking me to play something from that album. And here it is mentioned, singled out in the foreword to this book, Joe's Garage and Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch, which is actually what's called a droodle, I think, a droodle. This guy would make lines and make shapes out of simple lines. And look it up, droodles. I'll give you examples. He says, this is a storybook. It is not a rock and roll biography. This is the only real and official Frank Zappa book. All other books attempting to trade on my name are unauthorized and full of misinformation. This book is dedicated to all the fans who have made the last 20 years of large-scale absurdities possible. This book used to be called Christmas in New Jersey. So there's his Christmas theme. Now, look what he does. The thing starts off with Francesco Zappa, who lived in the 1760s, 70s, and 80s. An actual composer with the same name as Frank pretty well. Well, Frank had Frank Zappa or Francis Zappa. This is Francesco Zappa. And he was a composer around the time of Mozart. So look at how, so we're going to, the scene is New Jersey, a middle-class neighborhood at Christmas. And here's this guy from 200 years before walking around in New Jersey. So how does this time traveler get there? And so Frank begins with a time traveler. And he says, we hear a computer-generated, so there's your hologram, Android meme. We hear a computer-generated version of the first movement of Francesco Zappa's string trio Opus 1, number 1. So Zappa released, they found the scores of Francesco Zappa's works, and he put out a Synclavier-generated replay or perfection of the scores of Francesco Zappa. So he starts off with one of these Francesco Zappa things. The curtain rises as the music plays. The scene is an Italian's front lawn in New Jersey at Christmas in a middle-class neighborhood. There's an oversized nativity scene near the center of the stage. Lying in the manger is an extremely ugly nativity infant with the face of the love doll, wearing a perverted version of Wayne Cochran's enormous white video-religious pompadour, lit by a tiny amber spot. Francesco, a short, paunchy man in his 50s, can be seen through the window of the stupid little house watching a cowboy movie on a tiny TV. So that's partly reflecting him watching his father watch TV, Frank's father. As the show concludes, he turns off the set, and in spite of the fact that there's snow on the ground, walks down the steps between his two concrete flamingos dressed in baggy boxer shorts, a white T-shirt, black shoes and socks with garters, and the appropriate hat and wig for a middle-class Milanese of the Baroque period. So here he is with a typical working-class clothing of a man, but he's got a 200-year-old wig on, a hat and a wig from the Baroque period. Over one shoulder is a strap supporting a small-scale Baroque cello. In his hand, he's carrying a copy of Grove's Dictionary of Music and Musicians. That's where they found this description of Francesco Zappa in that dictionary. He walks to center stage, and as the overture concludes, announces, he says, my name is Francesco Zappa. Now, really, Frank's describing himself as he was in 1984. My name is Francesco Zappa. I am an obscure Italian composer. Nobody really knows when I was born, and there's no conclusive evidence that I ever actually died. How's that for a beginning ionic statement? No evidence that he was born, no evidence he died. Right there. I live in New Jersey now. So he's like one of these guys that's been around, like Saint Germain, been around for thousands of years. I live in New Jersey now, so I dress like a native. Grove's Dictionary of Music and Musicians indicates that I flourished between the years 1763 and 1788, the exact year Zappa did, 1963 to 1988. That's when he started working in the Cucamonga studio, recording records, and he ends in 1988 when the tour collapses. So this book apparently says the same dates. And he says, right around the time of that little Strons, S-T-R-O-N-Z, Strons, or asshole, Mozart. I was born in Milan, not far from a mosquito-infested lagoon in an area now known as the Parco Redesio. At an early age, I decided to become a composer. I learned to play the cello and to pick up a few bucks on the side. I gave music lessons to the Duke of York. I think that's how he picked up a few bucks, by giving music to the Duke of York, music lessons. Then it says, the nativity box rotates 180 degrees on a turntable. The reverse of it is an exact duplicate of the front, except this time the manger has a concertina lying in it. To either side of it pose stiffly the Duke of York and Lady Aurora. They are in English Baroque costume, completely overdone. She is very glamorous. He is a wimpish prancer. They both look stupid in the box. Francesco says, that's him over there. What a prick. He likes to call me a little guinea. I hate the English. They are scum. Now, remember, Frank's had legal problems with the English, and they threw him off the stage, and he had to sue the Queen and all this stuff before. And he once said, the English are the most eccentric people on the planet. Duke of York, abruptly coming in life, says, where's that little guinea cello player? It's time for my lesson. The civilized world awaits my musical debut. Francesco walks to the box with his cello and pretends to dust off the Duke's costume before giving him his lesson. Francesco says, very insincerely, at your service, O radiant benefactor. You're looking very significant today. Mamma mia, your new wig, it's so incredibly bouffant. And your sport frock, porco dio. The people of your country certainly know a lot about grooming and comportment. It must be wonderful to be a truly English sort of a person. Really terrific, I bet you. Okay, just put this thing between your legs here. Move the coat a little bit. That's it. The Duke of York says, yes, it is great to be English. There is no question about it. We are God's chosen people. We are the best. We have always been the best. We will always be the best. You should be damn thankful that I have given you the opportunity, wretched and foreign as you are, to provide me with instruction on this uncomfortable piece of musical furniture. Why must it go between my legs? Surely this is not a condition in which one of God's chosen people should be observed when in a seated position. The Duke fidgets and fumbles with the cello. Francesco reaches into the manger, procuring the concertina. Francesco says, it's a small problem, your goodness. Easily solved. The possibility always lurks that you are, in fact, not a cello kind of guy. In cases such as this, prudence leads one to consider the concertina, and a friendly little instrument which tends to increase the strength of the arms. Duke of York says, dash all this drudgery, those damn scales and so forth. If only I could just sort of emerge as the illuminating beacon of British musical life, then surely the heart of fair Lady Aurora would be mine. And it says, Lady Aurora breaks her frozen pose momentarily and looks at the Duke as if he were the scum of the earth. Francesco winks at her and retrieves his cello. Then Francesco says to the audience, this arrogant cocksucker has a bitch he's been trying to strap on for the last 5 years named Lady Aurora. I already fucked her a dozen times. Now remember, Bert, this is a Broadway musical, all right? So he says, I already fucked her a dozen times. She's not bad. There's no way the old boy's going to get some crumpet from this girl. She only goes for cello players of Milanese extraction who have an expressive tone and write cheerful little Dago-sounding string trios. The Duke is lazy, tone-deaf, and has about as much sex appeal as the stench that comes out of the vents in his trainer accordion. But the guy's got to earn a living. All I got to do is act like an ignorant greaseball and tell him how good he looks every once in a while. Meanwhile, I get to ride the wild girl, all the porridge I can eat, and the U.S. equivalent of 27 cents a month in pre-war dollars. Being an obscure Italian composer is really not all that bad. The Duke of York says, where do I put my fingers? Francesco says, what? Your fingers? That's an incredibly intelligent question, your magnitude. Duke of York, hurry, you nasty little knight of Columbus. There's not a moment to lose. I must learn to play this damn thing immediately. My beloved is due here at any time. Aurora, like a doll waking up. I'm here. Duke of York, she's here. See what you've done? By delaying my lesson, I'm now forced to play this fiendish contraption in an unstructured manner. Aurora, my love, you're a bit early. I'd hoped to enrapture you with a fully developed concertina technique. Aurora says, the concertina? I thought you were learning to play the cello. Francesco, his expressiveness has progressed beyond the mere cello. Duke of York, quite, far too easy. The concertina is a much more masculine instrument. British sailors play them all the time. Francesco to the audience, referring to the sailors. Then they fuck each other in the butt and chase the parrot around the poop deck. Aurora says, the concertina has never beguiled or entranced Aurora, the concertina has never beguiled or entranced me. I feel the instrument lacks animal magnetism. Duke of York, but you never heard me play the concertina. Francesco says, me neither, your wonderment. Duke of York, once I begin, do not be ashamed to weep or show other forms of raw emotion. In my skilled British hands, this instrument becomes a lethal yet sensitively poetic weapon of vengeance and destruction. Aurora, taking out her handkerchief. I'm ready then. Move me, Reginald. Duke of York says, if the little guinea will provide a suitable accompaniment on that awful brown thing between his legs, I will enthrall you with the premiere performance of my duet for uncomfortable foreign instrument and experimental concertina, Opus 1. We begin with a somber first movement expressing deep feelings of unrequited love. And it says a horrible computer-generated musical interlude featuring an atonal concertina solo superimposed on a Baroque cello ostinato is heard. Aurora says, as the piece concludes, that was dreadful, utterly dreadful. Reginald, you have purposely offended my ears. How could you squeeze that vile-smelling instrument in a room with improper ventilation? You have made it impossible for me to revel in Francesco's sensuous tone. You are the enemy of the cello, you bastard. May you burn forever in God's perfect hell. The Duke of York says, Francesco, you rotten little ravioli. You are fired and banished henceforth from the premises of my improperly ventilated English country estate. And the lights dim on the nativity box. The lights dim on the nativity box as Lady Aurora and the Duke freeze their poses. The box rotates once again to its original position. Now Francesco turns to the audience. So I got fired. Big deal. Later that night, Lady Aurora blew me, gave me a basket full of unidentifiable English pork things, her best napkin as a love souvenir, and bid me farewell as I set out to become increasingly obscure. I soon learned that one of the problems of not having a birth date in a musician's dictionary is that you can never know for sure how old you are. This in turn makes it impossible to act your age. Back in those days, I was in trouble all the time. In the last 200 years, I haven't found one single person with a real sense of humor, with a real, capitalized, real sense of humor. You want to stop your musical career dead in its tracks? Do something amusing. Amusing in quotes. So here's Frank talking about himself. People hate that shit. They think it's not artistic. The slightest whiff of humor, and it's the one-way ticket to Fresno for a composer in any century. Then the box rotates again. The rear wall has now been draped with a realistic scenic background representing The Hague circa 1770. Fumbling around inside are a group of midget musicians dressed in costumes of the Dutch Baroque with instruments of the period. One of them is a girl with ugly teeth, fetishing an onion. So then it goes into a whole encounter there, and I must look for the metaphysical parts. Let's see. Any comments, you two, yet?
Yes, your magnitude. I was thinking this weapon of vengeance and destruction is the music Stockhausen heard in 9/11. Right.
Now, the food metaphor that you keep bringing in. So it jumps forward. So now it's 1984, and he's in New Jersey. So he's traveled through a bunch of scenes, and he's with a guy named Shemp, who is a cook or something. He's dedicated to onions. So let's see. Shemp says he gets mad at the discussion he's having with Francesco. He orders a mystery burger. And Shemp says, you speak of strange things, Italian person. Everyone I know eats onions, but you actually request their suppression. Francesco, I have no desire to smell of onions. I already smell of garlic. Shemp, I too smell of garlic, but onions are terrific for you. You only want to have a good time. What kind of a schmuck turns down an onion? Francesco, I do not require an onion. However, if that is the customary method of cheeseburger achievement in this region, then what the fuck? Shemp says, very puzzling, this creature of which you speak. In all my travels, I've never butchered a single one. They are indigenous, perhaps, to France? Francesco says, they are not alive. They do not require butchering. They are strange. He's talking about a cheeseburger. They are strange, oily things that will eventually contain the same ingredients as the cardboard that anonymous person stuffed in your shirt when it visits the laundry. The burger's made up of cardboard. They most definitely. Now remember, in the movie Scenario for Your Uncle Meat back in '69, this is 15 years later. He's talking about the camp victims are taught the verities of the McDonald burger, and Colonel Sanders ends up running the camp. He's a little doll in the glove compartment of the Volkswagen bus. So you got this burger thing carrying on. He says, they most definitely have not invented it yet, says Francesco, and will not exist in France until after Jerry Lewis attempts to order one from room service. Shem says, curse you, Mr. Weary, sort of Italian-looking traveler. You have spoiled my entire evening. You make a request I cannot fulfill, and I lose a sale. Must I now turn to white-collar crime? Francesco says, my sympathy, transient vendor, but there are those moments when only a cheeseburger will do. Shem says, buy a chicken. I'll kill it for you in back of the nativity box. You don't even watch. Eat real food, a nice chicken, a couple of onions, and then you'll prosper, maybe even flourish. Francesco showing him the book of Dictionary Musicians. The year is 1770, and according to this book, I'm already flourishing. Shem says, a person as obscure as yourself was never meant to flourish without an entire stomach full of chickens and onions. Francesco says, few have managed to flourish in a manner as obscure as the one to which I have devoted myself. Shem, let me guess, you're an arms dealer. Francesco, worse, I am a composer of cheerful, dago-sounding string trios, a part-time music teacher, a cello player of mediocre repute, and a whoremonger. I'm hungry as fuck and demand immediate delivery on the cheeseburger. Shem says, okay, the customer is always right. Burger you want? Burger you got. He lifts the lid on a small steaming cauldron, peers into it, mumbles a few Kabbalistic phrases, appears suddenly amazed, and continues. Shem says, the object you desire is in my view. Why does it mean so much to you? I see a man. He has my face. The burger lives in his briefcase. His clothes are green, of martial cut. The briefcase steams, although it's shut. He opens it and offers to a pair of pudgy guys you knew somewhere ahead in nonlinear time. This mystery burger I divine. So he's describing a scene in the movie 200 Motels where Theodore Bickel plays the military guy, Rance Muhammad, and he is looking at Flo and Eddie from the Turtles, known as the Fluorescent Leech, and Eddie Flo, short for Fluorescent Leech. So it's a scene. Suddenly it becomes a scene because in the movie, Rance Muhammad appears with a suitcase with steam coming out of it. Well, now we know what's in it, the mystery burger. Francesco says, talking about Flo and Eddie, are they wearing matching, ugly-looking, multicolored shirts? Shem says, what? You got a mirror? You can see in the pot? How could you know this? Because remember, Shem is the guy. He has the face of this guy. And then the nativity box rotates again. This time it is an exact replica of the scene from 200 Motels Francesco is about to describe, with the Dutch midgets as the characters listed below. And Francesco says, I am an obscure Italian composer. I know everything there is to know about nonlinear time. How about that? That ionic? I know everything there is to know about nonlinear time. In your cauldron, you have seen the Fluorescent Leech and Eddie. They are standing on a fake stage in Pinewood Studios, that's in England, during the filming of 200 Motels in the year 1970. You are there, too. Your name is Rance Muhammad. You are supposed to be the devil, and your wife used to be a censor at NBC. So, Shemp becomes Rance Muhammad playing the devil. Francesco says, you are about to entice these miniature replica fat boys with my very own personal mystery burger, which is in Rance Muhammad's suitcase or briefcase, after which Ringo's chauffeur, Ringo Starr, will eat it without having to pay you for it. You have located the wrong burger. Look in there again and find me another one. I'm going to be late for work. The nativity box lights dim, and it rotates back to normal, with the Sicilian elephant man still seated in the manger without a bag, icing his bruises. Shem says, this is exceedingly unusual, Mr. Whoremonger. When I look in the pot and do the mumbo-jumbo, I only report to you what I see. I say rhymes and so forth, but they mean nothing to me. Non-linear time is a concept to which I am not accustomed. Francesco says, non-linear time is the clock and calendar of all the arts. Nonlinear time is the clock and calendar of all the arts, even the black ones. So there's Frank's philosophy. All the arts are trying to get in touch, like Roxy says, with the non-physical, or express the non-physical. Right? Nonlinear time is the clock and calendar of all the arts, even the black ones. So that's pretty interesting. So then Shem says, now that you mention it, I myself have dabbled a bit in the wholesome form of Yiddish alchemy. Now note, this is how the thing begins, guys. It begins with this time-traveling guy who's in a book and experiencing xenochrony. And he's and this is, and he's dealing with a cook, a guy with a burger, and the burger guy is a devil himself in the future. This is written by Ion. And it's like science fiction might have scenarios like this, but it's being done by Frank in reference to musical compositions and presented very bluntly, very simply. So Francesco says... But
I have to interrupt. I remember when the drops came out, a lot of people were seeing the devil on the bottle. It's like the mystery food is scary for even my ex-boyfriend. That was one of his main issues. Like he said, I'm crazy to take something that I don't know what is really in there, and he was saying the devil.
Yeah, and you said to him, well, what people would say, I would say, listen, buddy, you eat all kinds of food, you don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
You know,
even in the air, you breathe, you don't know what's in the air, or in the water, or soil. I mean,
turns out there's a way more radiation than we're allowed to have, but we're used to it. So we don't even have to worry. Yeah, that's where I was conventional in a sort of way.
The chemistry changing, and there is less oxygen in water and in the atmosphere, and this and that. I mean, but somehow is this reaction. This is a new food, and many people, because they're not in the frequency, they're just scared. Or I don't know why they refuse to engage it.
They're stuck in particular quadrants. I predicted nuclear war or nuclear radiation. I was following the conventional thinking radiation is bad back in 2001, so I'm not too prophetic there. But the point is, I am talking about radiation, which then becomes the key material for our products. So, I had the right to be slightly off, coming at it from a different angle. But I thought it was funny the way I was emphasizing radiation all the time. And Frank was talking about radiation in that interview last week. It's all music interview and becoming radiation frequencies. And then here he's talking about cooking and food and burger. And Ian is constantly coming up with recipes for quick buck products like, hey, Bob, we could make a neat candy roll. Why don't we do that? He said, like a devil. Okay, Bob, I said, no, let's just focus on the eye cell. No, Bob, we can make a killing off this special pancake mix I could come up with. That's what happened occasionally with Ion. He loved being creative and making money. We're coming up with products. He came up with a good candy. What do you call that? Those toffee. He came up with a great toffee. You know toffee? You know what toffee is?
Yeah.
You know that. What is it made of? It's like beige or brown.
It's like a
caramel
with caramel or something.
Caramel. That was what you went on about this caramel, this mystical caramel burger. He was trying to get me to get Carol to make. Carol would go to bed. He tried to. Hey Bob, can we get Carol to make some of this caramel burger? And I'm trying to get the secrets of the universe, and he's trying to fucking make a fucking food. But it's just like Shemp here. So Shemp admits he's a Yiddish alchemist. And Zappa did a song about the famous alchemist, what was his name? Ubertino or something. More obscure alchemist, not like Paracelsus, but Puccinelli or something. Fucanelli. Yeah, he did a song named after this famous alchemist, Fucanelli, which I once asked either the Evergreens or Ion. They said, yeah, Fucanelli actually succeeded in turning lead into gold. He made gold. Okay, Francesco, of course you've dabbled a bit. You're a retailer. The rest of the concept should be fairly simple to grasp. Time does not go from here to there or from then to now. Everything is happening all the time. It always has, always will. Now, he's making his big book and conceptual continuity. He goes right into the time issue immediately. Lays it all out, which is like what Frank was always talking about. And remember that Toronto TV show, New Music, they ask him, they start the interview saying, what would you like to know, Frank? What would you like to know? And he says, what time is it? See? Trying to figure out about time. That's what he wanted to know. What time is it? He's like, Francesco, how old am I? What time is it and how old am I? Was I born or what not? So Francesco says, after saying that time, it always has, it always will. Ignorant men have compartmentalized it. Now that's the alphabet effect. In a pathetic attempt to meet imaginary marketing deadlines. Time is one big lump of stuff. Remember he said last week? You look at this time canceling wave, going nowhere. From a distance it looks like a solid object. So he says, time is one big lump of stuff. Any one time is equal to any other time. Every obscure Italian composer knows this. Okay, so Francesco Zappa knew it and Frank Zappa knew it. Frank Zappa, obscure Italian composer. Schimpf. Now, he was obscure in the classical world, not in the rock world, but the classical world didn't know that he was a composer. So you could take it that he's obscure in that context. You know what I mean? You get my rationalization there?
Yeah.
Good. So Schimpf says, surely this is not a thing which could be proven, about time, no time. Francesco to the audience. Look, you're watching Channel 9, right? There's always something else on Channel 5. He takes a direct media environment and says, you're watching something on Channel 9? There's other channels. So Schimpf lifts the lid and looks into the pot again. Steam poofs out in little atomic explosion, and red lights in the bottom make his face look scary. Schimpf says, this is not a good night for the kosher food industry. I see big trouble in the pot. Strange things in the future. Francesco says, you are a retail romantic. Strangeness is nothing to fear. Ugliness is normal. Danger is stupid. Fear is boring. The future's already happened. People live and die like the chickens you want to whack up in back of the box over there. Madonna. Schimpf says, the things I see disturb me greatly. Francesco, it's because of your overhead. You need to get rid of the wagon for a while. I got a terrific idea. Let's go to the New World. Schimpf says, America? They're getting ready to have a revolution over there. Remember, this is 1770. They got Indians. The Indians got smallpox from the blankets the British gave them for Christmas. See? Gave the blankets for Christmas. See, there's the evil thing of Christmas. Did you know the British gave the blankets to the Indians on Christmas for a Christmas present? People sleep, in light of the fact that I wrote a book, A Christmas Gift to a Young Nation. Ion was my Christmas gift, and definitely Ion has destroyed everything. So that's a fulfillment here, which Frank is picking up on. The Indians got smallpox from the blankets the British gave them for Christmas. Now, Frank is writing this right around the time I'm writing my book, early 70s. I think some of this was written back then. Not sure, but you can see it in the other transcripts written back in the 60s. So Schimpf goes, people sleep in beds with wooden boards down the middle so nothing can happen. That's a point he makes in his interview with Bob Marshall. He brings up the Puritans' boards in their beds to divide the sexes. It's right here in the script, and this is 4 years before the interview. So there's Frank acting out his script. People sleep in beds with wooden boards down the middle so nothing can happen. Are you crazy? I'll stay in the wagon. Francesco says, what you say is true. I have no interest in visiting a place where such obstacles are placed in the path of recreation. However, in 214 years, that would be 1984 when this is happening, in 214 years, the boards will have been removed. Small wheels will have been installed on the bottom of these boards. And incredibly stupid girls with earphones on named Debbie will ride them all over the place in Santa Monica. He's trying to seduce Schimpf to go to the future by saying that those boards will be used for whatever you call those small boards. What are they called? Skateboards. Small wheels will have been installed in the bottom. And now, in this year, in 1984, he was invited to speak to the University Composers Association. I don't know, composers who are university professors. And in his talk, he goes into how all the rock music industry and all music, pop industry, is geared to a 13-year-old girl named Debbie. So here he is naming Debbie again. She's the daughter of a union guy. And incredibly stupid girls with earphones on named Debbie will ride them all over the place in Santa Monica. Shemp goes, the Holy City? Francesco says, yes, but I do not suggest we visit there. Such women lack the mental capacity for voluntary contraction of vagina muscles or vaginal muscles. And when they blow, they don't swallow. So he's saying not to go to Santa Monica because the women lack the mental capacity for voluntary contraction of vaginal muscles, and when they blow you, they don't swallow. Far better that we go to New York. Now, this is Frank. He couldn't get a gig in '66 in L.A. because of the shutdown of the business because the merchants were told to harass the kids. And so he can't get any work in Santa Monica, so he goes to New York. So Francesco says, far better that we go to New York. A guy like you could do real good there. You know what I'm thinking? Frank was actually Francesco Zappa. That's what he's telling us here. This is a secret. That Frank Zappa was 200 and 300 years old.
He said, I'm traveler like you.
Yes. Maybe he was a buddy of mine. Maybe he's part of the OHAB, Hey Bob, whatever my name was. The Hey Bob. What is it? Hey Bob. It's not Bob, so it has to be Bab.
Hobab.
He's an employee he was my fucking butler. Or something. Jesus Christ, this is a breakthrough for me. Frank, no wonder when you looked at him, his eyes spiraled. Everybody knew he didn't look fucking human when you looked into his face. There was something that came off his face. It spiraled like he has of himself and Absolutely Free. In the cover, he has a menacing picture of himself with the mystical spiral coming out of one of the pupils or eyeballs. That cosmic spiral, that's what it was almost like when you looked at him. Sometimes the spiral will come out into your face. So that's probably what happens when you meet someone 500 years old. So he's telling us that he is Francesco Zappa, who moved forward to complete the work, to help Bob ionize everything. So
we have to ask Ion.
Yes, you know what I was going to say? Duh, of course Bob is. He'll confirm it up the yin-yang, man.
He's still around. He never died.
You played basketball with him back in Rome 2,000 years ago. You're on the same team, Bob. But Saint Germain doesn't like Francesco. They don't get along. That's why you don't have much contact with Saint Germain. You hang out with Francesco, Saint Germain ain't coming around. So anyways, Francesco or Frank says, far better that we go to New York. A guy like you could do real good there. Shemp goes, New York? Francesco, they're calling it New Amsterdam now, but in a few years, a bunch of assholes like the Duke of York will show up and open a disco called Xenon, Xenon. Now, one of you smarter Ionauts should fucking freeze on that word Xenon. Do you know what that is? That is one of the gases at the center of the angel diagram.
Oh.
I like when Bert goes, holy shit, I can't take this.
He's one
no,
of
Xenon.
Cider.
No, get off your goddamn speakerphone. Stop masturbating and get back on the fucking phone so I can pick up what you're saying. Can't yell out the diss. What did you say? We want to hear what you're contributing.
He's one of us.
He's one of us. That's right. Look what we're discovering. Can you imagine the Zappa fans listening right now? What a bunch of fucking maniacs. Very intelligent analysis, but they keep going off in these sidebars thinking Frank is 10,000 years old. I mean, who are these people? We hope we're creating that effect in the listeners right now. Most of them people have written books on Zappa. The Duke of York will show up and open a disco called Xenon. Now, the disco, there's no disco in 1770, whenever New Amsterdam happened, 1740 or whatever. Even it's like the Duke will show up and open a disco. That means the Duke of York is coming from the future. Now, and then Francesco says, they'll meet fascinating people like themselves there and accidentally reproduce. The ones who can't will have their photographs taken with Brooke Shields. Is that a slight? Is that an insult on gay people? They can't reproduce, so they hang out with the stars and keep this Hollywood machine going? What do you think? Is that what he means? I don't know. The ones who can't reproduce will have their photographs taken with Brooke Shields. It's a terrific place. You'll love it. Shemp says, I get seasick. I can never stand the boat ride. Francesco, look, Butcher. What's your name, buddy? Shemp says, Shemp. Shemp? Terrific. Look, Shemp, concentrate. We are not going on a boat because we are not going to New Amsterdam 1770. We're going to New York 1984. Shemp says, this is ridiculous. It can't be done. It simply can't be done. Francesco says, are you not a Yiddish alchemist specializing in the retail field? Shemp says, obviously. Francesco, and what does every alchemist do when nobody's looking? Now listen to this, guys. He boils a bunch of crap looking for the secret of the philosopher's stone, right? Now that's what Roxy says. They're all trying to get to the eye cell and the RNA drops. He boils, this is what we did. We boiled a bunch of crap and we found the secret of the philosopher's stone. I did it. I've watched these fuckers do this through the centuries. I watched Frank attempt it back then. I watched St. Germain attempt it. I just watched it, just laugh. Look at them all trying to make the RNA drop. And then I fucking did it.
When nobody was looking.
Well, everybody was looking. I was on the radio bragging that I was going to do it for 20 years.
Yeah.
I was bragging I was going to do it. They still didn't care. I couldn't.
Well, nobody.
You're a French composer.
Was listening.
That's right. They're too busy trying to be creative and create their own little art scene. And, talking about obscure Italian composer, I'm the most obscure composer that ever existed. And I did some major compositions like the Ten Commandments. I did that. 10 Commandments in the key of G. I don't know if it was a note or chord. I can't remember. But I think they both apply. But no, this is good. Look, so Shemp is denying he understands what's going on, and Francesco calls his bluff and says, what does every alchemist do when nobody is looking? He boils a bunch of crap looking for the secret of the philosopher's stone, right? And Shemp says, everybody knows that. And Francesco says, certainly, Shemp. But what kind of a stone does a Yiddish retail alchemist look for? Shemp, outraged. You bastard. You've known it all along. The philosopher's incredibly realistic simulated diamond. Curse you. Francesco says, you crafty little vagrant kosher butcher. You've got one in the pot there. And you've used it to travel in nonlinear time already. How else could you have known about the holy city? Shemp, pounding his breast. This is terrible, terrible. A whoremonger knows my secret. What will I do? Francesco says, Shemp, stop beating on yourself like that. They get all kinds of guys in New York that'll do it for you, beat on you. Sounds like more gay culture, right? Get the fake diamond and rub the son of a bitch or whatever you do, and let's get the fuck out of here. Shemp says, I won't do it. You can't convince me to go again. Now, these are the kind of devices that Ian was describing to me in the early months. All these neat little gadgets that dynasties had, like this, simulated diamond. It's neat little artifacts, like the crown jewels in London. Shemp says, I won't do it. You can't convince me to go again. See? Go again. Oh, he's been there before. Francesco, I knew it. You didn't get laid the first time, and that created a negative attitude toward the metropolitan area. Shemp, it was awful. Yellow vehicles traveling at great speed in the middle of the night over badly maintained roads. Noise, horrible noise. We did the noise, 911. And my hemorrhoids. Every time there was a bump, in the cab on the bumpy New York streets, spots on my trousers. Every time there was a bump, spots on my trousers. What does that mean? That he came, that blood popped up? I guess blood. It was God's perfect hell. Francesco says, I'll make you a deal. We go back right now. Now remember, this is a fucking Broadway musical, right? People are sitting there listening to this juvenile stuff, but very profound, mixing high and low culture. It's like cabaret culture that Carolyn Guertin likes. Francesco, I'll make you a deal. We go back right now. See, now Francesco knows that Shemp's already been there. We go back right now, and I'll get us a couple of tickets to Fiddler on the Roof. Then it says, more Francesco's happy little Dago-sounding computerized trio music is heard. This time, disco drums have been added. You know, Frank would always add things to the previous recordings in his studio. This time, disco drums have been added. People complained about what was added to the Room and the Jets album. Francesco and Shemp freeze their pose. A scenic drop of the New York City Theater District, circa 1984, descends, leaving them behind it. A stupid dance number, now dig this, a stupid dance number based on theatrical foot traffic takes place to the Baroque disco music. You know how we talked about Zappa being a Baroque composer? He's making Baroque rock music, the classical and the rock. It could be called that, Baroque rock music, Baroque disco music. As it concludes, Shemp, carrying the pot with the philosopher's incredibly realistic simulated diamond, and Francesco, still with the book, that's the dictionary of musicians, emerge from the left, strolling through the dancers. The music subsides. Shemp says, "A deal's a deal. You promised me tickets. We come all this way, and there's no Fiddler on the Roof. I'm rubbing it again, and we're going back. I hate this place. Who are these people? What do they think they're doing?" He's looking at the dancers who are based on theatrical foot traffic. All right. So Francesco says, "So I made a mistake. Everybody knows there's only safe investment. Everybody knows there's only safe investment remakes and revivals on Broadway in 1984. Safe investment remakes and revivals. It's the only sort of entertainment permitted during corrupt Republican administrations. They must be suppressing Fiddler on the Roof because of the disproportionately small quantity of non-Jewish characters in the story. It's part of the president's newly mandated Year of the Bible. Guys like him don't appreciate musicals full of ignorant Russian Christ killers twirl dancing near the pigsty." Meanwhile, at the White House, in the presidential bedroom, over by the reusable idealized Christmas tree, our chief executive says to the First Lady, "Sweetheart, have one of the Negroes got me a hot toddy? No, sweetheart, have one of the Negroes get me a hot toddy and that video cassette of The Devil and Miss Jones." I think I saw The Devil and Miss Jones in 1973 when I was there at the Newport, New York Jazz Festival, and it just come out. It was a pretty good porn picture, The Devil and Miss Jones. As he completes his request, we see approaching from around the corner near their door what appears to be the ghost of Abraham Lincoln, making his way toward the Lincoln bedroom. I'm sure Ian's talked about that, ghost in the White House. The president recites the Lord's Prayer while waiting for his toddy, pausing every once in a while to say, now, isn't that just beautiful? I think he's talking about the lyrics of the Lord's Prayer. By the time he gets to the line, "and dwell in the house of the Lord forever," Mr. Lincoln has reached the door to his room, passing through it in a ghostly fashion. The president repeats the line a few more times, finally summing it all up with, quote, "That certainly does give a person something to think about. Ah, it's the Christmas toddy. What format is this, Beta or VHS?" An unseen black servant replies, "I does not know, Your Majesty," M-A-J-N-E-S-T-Y, Your Majesty. Simultaneously, in a middle-class black household in Northern California, the Wilson family begins their holiday meal. Now, Ike Willis was living up in Portland, just a little bit north of Northern California. Ray White, another Negro singer in the Mother's Invention, African-American singer, Ray White. You take Ray White and Ike Willis, you come up with Ray Wilson, which is here, the Wilson family. I'm meeting with Ray Wilson tomorrow here in Maui at the beach. Ray Wilson is a member in bad standing. He never showed up at any Ion Caucus, Black Caucus meetings, but Ray is the guy Ray is the guy in New York City who was my connection to the R&B scene. Remember I was talking about him last week? I was talking about how Ray, he would perform in these oldies shows, nostalgia shows. He knew all the old 50s guys, and they liked him. He's a good singer, so he would sing with them. So I met all these 50s guys that, I fell in love with back in the 50s. I met all these people through Ray. So Ray is my entertainment dope dealer connection. He's my connection to that music world. Well, Ray hasn't got much money, and he's always running around Manhattan doing odd jobs and this and that. I haven't heard from Ray in a couple of years. Today, I get a call. My message machine is Ray calling saying he's in town. He's on Maui. He's got to see me. Ray Wilson. And here's Frank visiting the Wilson family. So I read this. I read this before the show. I was looking at it. I said, holy shit, Ray Wilson. I talked to him on the phone 2 hours before I see this. See? Now that's the kind of intimate anachrony that leads me to be the great Philosopher's Stone. That's the kind of connections you like, Rosie.
That's the proof.
There's the proof. And I'll try to explain it.
Yes.
I said one or two half lines to Ray. He hasn't talked to me in a few years. And I said, I don't know what I said. It was something relatively normal. He says, Jesus Christ, you're the wackiest guy I know on the planet. I hadn't even started. And he judged me as incredibly far out. So, but he does know about the drops, and he wants to get the drops. And he said, could you bring me a sample? So I'm going to sprinkle drops on his collarbone like I did to Corbin and see if it sinks into him. But he's interested in the product. He used to work for Gary Null, so he knows a lot about the Gary Null world. And Ray is a great guy. And he's the guy, I told you last week, if you listen to the archives, Roxy, I don't know if you were there. Do you remember this? He and I said, we're going down to see James Brown at the Hard Rock Cafe. And he says, we got no tickets. It doesn't matter. We're going to get in, Ray. So we went down there, and Bobby, forget his last name, the original guy who had a rock R&B record store in Harlem, who brought James Brown to Harlem and to the Apollo Theater in the 50s. And Bobby, whatever his name was, he walks by me and Ray, and he sees Ray. He says, hey, Ray, I'm going in. And he says, come on. So we walk in with the godfather of the scene and go right to the front. And then after the concert, we go backstage and talk to James Brown because Ray knew Bobby. And so after Ray, he couldn't get over it for the next couple of weeks. How the fuck did you do that, Bob? We went down there with no tickets, so we ended up getting everywhere. I said, I don't know, just what would I have said back then? Oh, it's probably because I understand McLuhan, Ray. You got to study McLuhan. How he's working for McLuhan or Zappa. You got to listen to Zappa, Ray. Listen to Zappa. That'll help you. But he was just flabbergasted that I did that. And so he expects the wild and crazy events around me. So simultaneously, in a middle-class black household, Northern California, the Wilson family begins their, hey, maybe Ray's one of these eternal guys. We're all fucking eternal and we don't tell each other. You fucking Bert are probably 2,000 years old. And Roxy's probably 4 million years old. Yeah, nobody's telling anybody. Ray's probably been around a long time. And it's the way he suppresses me. As soon as I start telling him about I, he goes, shut up, you're a wacky. He doesn't want it brought up because then he'd be forced to reveal to me he actually knew Ion 4,000 years ago. So this is the drama of my life, Bert. If you study Phineas Wake, your life will end up like mine. Very exciting. Are you there? Oh, shit. Bert got knocked off again. Sorry, Bert. You're back, Bert. Sorry.
Yeah,